So I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker, Matt Rockledge. He got his PhD in psychology at Ohio State University, then moved into marketing, starting at Kellogg and Northwestern, and so as not to get off the compass to Northeastern, where he currently is a professor of marketing. He has a lot of interests, especially in text analytics and turning text into emotion in particular, and has developed his own tool to do that called the evaluative lexicon. He's also very interested in the role of emotion and language and persuasion, and written a number of papers in top journals in that area as well. So without further ado, please, Matt. Thank you.
So I am one of the psychology interlopers in the business world, so thank you for having me and humoring me in my psychology. So today I want you to begin by imagining the year is 1998. We're talking Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, the whole 9 yards. So hopefully bringing you back to your nostalgia days in some cases, some maybe not. But at this time, 2 books were released, right? Both to equally positive reviews on Amazon, both 5-star ratings. And in fact, to this day, they have the very same star rating on Amazon.com. Yet one of them went on to make billions of dollars, spurred multiple sequels in both books, and movies, and has theme parks modeled after it. And we talk about it nearly on a daily basis, but the other one you've probably never even heard of. Same star ratings. The one you've never heard of, Jan Karen, A New Song. The one that went on to be an absolute cultural phenomenon, Harry Potter, right? Many of you know. And this is interesting because we often talk about, let's maximize people's positivity. Let's maximize what people are saying and trying to maximize the positivity perhaps of their language through sentiment analysis or through their star rating online. For this to be a reasonable thing to do, this positivity ought to be able to tell us something about the value of the product or something that might happen in the future about its success. Well, is this actually the case? What does the research say? And there have definitely been successes in this domain where, yep, we can take star ratings and predict the future to a certain extent. But notably for a literature that doesn't allow weird results to come out very often, there have also been weird failures where this Holbrook and Addis paper, for instance, showed that the better star rating a movie got, the worse it did. So in other words, star rating was negatively predictive of future success or concurrent success. And so something strange is going on here. And in fact, some companies have even gone as far to say, you know what, these traditional ratings aren't really giving us what we want. We're going to abandon them altogether. So there's something amiss in the land of ratings, right? And what we've found and others have found is that, in fact, most ratings are positive. So here's 2.2 million Amazon products from 1996 to about 2015. And what you can see here is that 71% of products have an average rating of 4 stars or 5 stars, right? And in fact, if we just say, let's look at all the positive ratings, 3 stars and above, because 3 is the midpoint, we get 94% of products are rated positively. Right, so 94% are rated positively. In fact, when's the last time you gave your Uber, Lyft, or Airbnb host, for instance, anything lower than a 4-star rating? It just doesn't really happen. And so we're calling this the positivity problem, where it seems like there's an overwhelming degree of positivity, perhaps surprisingly, given the animosity we see sometimes. But there's some unreliability here, where there's just not a lot of diagnosticity from these positive ratings anymore because perhaps the overwhelming degree of positivity. And so what I'm arguing today is that we ought to move beyond simply whether someone's positive or negative something and talk about other things. And in fact, in psychology, where I come from, we've long acknowledged that, yeah, people's positivity doesn't seem to be a great predictor of what they're going to do in the future. And so this literature has moved beyond positivity long ago to talk about the strength of someone's opinion, right? And so we talk about how certain is someone about their opinion. That should give us a better indication of what they might do in the future. We also talk about how much knowledge they have, or how important that opinion is to who they are, or just the general importance of that opinion to them generally. And so what I'm arguing today is we should move beyond positivity, and one way we can do that is through emotion. And so I'm arguing that emotion behind someone's opinion should be a signal of how strong their opinion is. So some research I have, for instance, shows that emotional opinions, if I ask you your opinion, if your opinion's based on emotional responses, it's quicker to come to mind. You're going to give me your reaction much more quickly than if it's not based on as much emotion. So this indicates there's something about strength there, right? I also find that emotional opinions, if I ask you in different contexts, you're more likely to be consistent in your opinion if it's based more on emotion. And in fact, it's more consistent across months or even years in some research that I'm doing right now. And in fact, there's, from researchers in this room, there's indication that emotional reactions give ourselves some sort of indication about our opinion. It provides this very undeniable signal to us what our opinion is. So if I'm excited about something, I realize that I'm very excited and I'm very positive. And then same for you, it gives you a signal about my opinion. If I'm up here excited about my work, you'll say, yeah, he seems pretty positive, maybe unwarrantedly so, but yeah, he seems pretty positive. So this emotion acts as a signal, and it seems to signal a strong opinion. And so we're asking here in today's research, can we use this emotion to predict the future, to predict future marketplace success based on these ideas? So to overview what I'll be talking about today, I'm going to show you across a number of different domains where we can predict success here. So across restaurants, Super Bowl commercials, and then movies across Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb reviews. So how do we go about measuring this? So a little bit of a giveaway in the intro, but we're going to be talking about online reviews. We're going to take this qualitative data and turn it into something quantifiable so that we can use that to predict future marketplace success. And we'll use a computational linguistic tool I created called the evaluative lexicon that picks up on that positivity and emotion in people's language. So I'm just going to very briefly tell you where this all came from, but I'm not going to perseverate on it too much. The basic idea is that we started out with 6.2 million words across all these 5 sources of text. Amazon, Yelp, Twitter, TripAdvisor, and then 10,000 movie and TV scripts. And then through a bunch of different methods, we whittled that down into about 1,500 words that are really indicative of someone's opinion when they use that word, and that it's used consistently across topics. So that, again, we can apply this to restaurants, but we can also apply it to movies, to product reviews, etc. And so the basic idea behind this is that you can see words like this are really conveying what a person's opinion is. If someone says something's useful or effective, that gives us information. And we can increase that positivity to outstanding and perfect. But that's not the dimension I'm talking about today. This is the dimension I'm talking about today. So holding positivity constant, how much is that opinion based on a feeling-based reaction? So we can talk about outstanding and perfect pushed toward emotion, toward amazing and exciting. Useful and effective, lower in positivity, but then we can also push that toward greater emotion in terms of satisfying and captivating. So these opinions are being based on a feeling. All right, and so in study 1, we wanted to look at the success of restaurants. Can we predict that? So we got all Chicago restaurants. I was at Northwestern Kellogg at this time that were rated positively on Yelp. So it was about 1,000 restaurants. And we looked at those that were rated positively because we wanted to say, okay, given this huge degree of positivity for these reviews, can we discern success within that positivity? And so we took the first 30 Yelp reviews ever written for those restaurants and got these 3 metrics, right? How positive those first 30 reviews in terms of their star rating, the emotion of the text, and then we wanted to hold constant the positivity of the text. So we're really getting at emotion here. And what we looked at is over a 2-month period, how many table reservations were being made on OpenTable.com, the most popular online table reservation system in the US. Over this 2-month period for these, there's about 1.3 million reservations, so we have some nice data to work with. I'm sure that OpenTable was thinking of us when they update these every day. So every day for about 2 months at noon, we grab these numbers for all 1,000 restaurants. And so here's a very simple graph. You can see on the bottom axis here, increasing emotion of those very first 30 reviews. And on the other axis here, increasing in number of table reservations each day made at that restaurant. And so we found this nice association in those first 30 reviews that predicted months or years later the number of table reservations made at that restaurant. And this is over and above the star rating, which was not a significant predictor. So all of you making decisions on Yelp based on its star rating, that's not related to success. And then the positivity of the review text sometimes gave us a nice signal, but sometimes, based on whatever else was in the model we were looking at, sometimes was not also a significant predictor of future success. So some of you might be wondering, what other things did we look at? This is over and above how long the restaurant's been open, which neighborhood in Chicago it was open in, whether it was an American, Indian seafood restaurant. And then this isn't just about expensive restaurants getting more emotion. We can also hold constant the average price that a person would pay at that restaurant. And for those of you who are curious, even when we look at those more negative restaurants, if we looked at the positive emotion in those negative restaurants, that too predicted marketplace success in the future. Study one bonus. What predicts the emotion behind consumers' text? So this is all well and good that we can use this to predict the future, but what actually is causing people to be more emotional, or at least what's associated with it? And so on OpenTable, they have these ratings, these facets, where you say, okay, well, how good was the food? How good was the service? What was the ambiance like? And how much value did you get for your money? So we can correlate these ratings with the emotion of those reviews I just talked about for each restaurant. So I want you to place a bet in your own mind for which one of these four facets you think is most related to the emotion that people express in the review. Service. Wow, interesting. Only ambiance. And I think this is fun because synonyms for ambiance for a restaurant are the feel, right? The mood. And so what we're finding is that, in fact, the mood and feel seems to be more related to this emotion and thus to table reservations than things like service, food, or value. Yeah. So in study two, we wanted to see if we could generalize to something else. And so we looked at Super Bowl ads. And so across two different Super Bowls, we looked at all commercials that were rated positively. This is 94 commercials, about 84 companies. And the way we got the ratings this time was through the most popular ad rating system for the Super Bowl. This is the USA Today Ad Meter score. And we looked at this, and this is from thousands of respondents, everyday people like you and me, who, while they're watching the Super Bowl, rate each commercial on a 1 to 10 scale, bad to very good. And what we did for measuring the emotion and positivity of people's language is we used tweets. And so we looked at all real-time tweets about these commercials using different keywords, et cetera, and see if we could predict the future from that. So here is one of the more well-known commercials from this time. This is hashtag Meet the Ketchups from Heinz. And you got something like this. So these wiener dogs running through the field. Everyone really liked this one. And so you get people like Ashley Willis, while they're watching the Super Bowl, tweeting their opinion for us, right? So we can look at the words they use, and these are two words, loved, from the evaluative lexicon, and we can pick up on that and measure the emotion and positivity across all the tweets from all the people who were spontaneously tweeting during the Super Bowl, right? And so what we had is about 200,000 tweets, and we could measure the average emotion behind the tweets, and then the positivity of those tweets to hold that constant. And our measure of success here was who's going to search for more information about these companies, right? Who's going online and then searching online for the company and then actually taking action and saying, yes, I would like more information. I want to know what this company is up to, right? So followers on Facebook in the 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. So the same exact graph as before, but now we're predicting new followers each day. And we're saying, like, okay, we know that some companies just tend to get more followers on a daily basis than others. So we take that into account by following people before the Super Bowl, following companies before the Super Bowl, and then looking, okay, do we see an uptick in the number of people after the Super Bowl? And can we predict that uptick based on the emotion behind people's language? And sure enough, we can. The more emotional those tweets are, that predicts more followers 2 weeks later, whereas the ad meter rating, not a predictor, as well as the average positivity of the text, not a predictor. So for those that are interested, the number, so the volume of tweets, some people might be thinking of that, that was a pretty good predictor. The volume of positivity, that was pretty good. Total number of tweets was okay, and this is over and above, like, okay, some people showed more Super Bowl ads, and then when the Super Bowl ad was shown above all that. And this is across both Super Bowls, so we got it in 2016 and in 2017. I'm going to end with talking about movie reviews and box office revenue. So again, generalizing further to a different domain. And here we did it both across Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, so all movies on those platforms. So it's about 3,000 movies across that time. And we did the same thing as we did for Yelp. Took the very first 30 reviews to see if we could predict marketplace success in the future, how many people actually got up their butts and went to the movie and saw it. Right. And so I'm going to show you the Rotten Tomatoes results, but they look very similar for IMDb. And I'm going to actually start with showing you the rating. So this is the star rating for those very first 3 reviews, and then predicting box office revenue. So you can see here, basically no association whatsoever. And in fact, if anything, you can see this going down just a touch. Whereas, yeah, before I talked to you about, yeah, the better star rating a movie gets, yeah, that kind of predicts it doing actually worse. Whereas if we look at the emotion, here we see a nice association. So those very same reviews, this data is coming from the very same reviews, very different signals, where star rating's not giving us much, emotion seems to be giving us some diagnosticity. And this is over and above star rating, which when put into the same model as emotion, does turn negative, whereas the positivity of the review text, that was giving us a good signal here. So yes, other characteristics of the movies that we might be interested in. This isn't just for big budget movies, right? It's not just saying like, oh yeah, we're picking up on big budget versus not. The effects get all the stronger when we account for the budget of the movie. Not wide versus limited release, not when the movie was released, and length of the movie. This is across USA opening weekend revenue. I showed you the USA total revenue, and it even predicts worldwide revenue. So there's something to be said about emotion and its generalizability across the world. And this is even within genres that are relatively less emotion-evoking, still probably emotion-evoking. But within documentaries too. So not just romance movies, for instance, also within documentaries. So to summarize just what I showed you and the implications, ratings tend to be a rather unreliable predictor. Positivity of the text does a bit better, but it too had some issues here and there. Whereas this emotional reaction, the extent to which people's opinions were based on feelings, was giving us a nice signal. Why is this happening? I just showed you that we can be predictive, but we're not exactly sure why, but we can think about reasons such as return behavior. If I had an emotional reaction toward a restaurant, I'm all the more likely to visit that restaurant again, or I might be more likely to tell other people about it. Right, so that emotional reaction drives me to tell others about that restaurant or movie to get them to go visit it. So just ending with some implications. Emotionality can be a metric both for marketers and consumers. So marketers could use this as a signal of what might happen in the future, or at least how well something's going at the moment. And for consumers, we could even consider some review platforms giving them the option of seeing what is the emotional star rating of this movie or of this restaurant. They could use that to make their decisions. So with that, I'll end. Thank my collaborators, Derek Rucker and Lauren Nordgren. And also just a shout out for the software. So this is freely available online at evaluativelexicon.com, and I'm happy to field any questions about that. So thank you very much.
Super interesting research.
Thank you.
For sharing.
Sorry, can I interrupt and ask you to just use the button on your mic so that people streaming can hear us?
It's really interesting. So the categories that you picked are ones in which consumers are sort of naturally emotionally engaging.
Relatively, yeah.
Would you expect to see this in categories like CPG, for instance, that are
Yeah.
just a little bit more practical?
Yes, I would. So I have other research showing, for instance, if you're more emotional about a blender online, you're showing us greater positivity toward the blender. So even if you could get people to have emotional reactions, some sort of delight from having used your blender or a mixer or these sorts of things, yes, I would predict that emotion gives you this signal. It's about like, wow, this person was really impacted by whatever happened, and that impact should predict something about the future. Yep. Yep.
So when you taking into consideration the negativity, are you lumping in that into calculation of the positive? Have you looked at what is the impact scale of the positive versus negative, if there is a difference?
Right, so is there an asymmetry in terms of if someone's negative, we should really be paying attention to that sort of thing? Is that what the question is?
Or does the negativity has a bigger impact or a smaller impact compared to
Yeah, so we did not look at that. We treated it as just a continuum, like if you're more positive versus more negative, what happens? We haven't dichotomized it, so like, okay, which is carrying more weights? But I think that's an interesting question. I've done research in my past about valence asymmetry, it's called, where like, what is having the bigger impact? And in some domains, negativity is more impactful, and in some it's irrelevant, or I shouldn't say irrelevant, just not as stronger. So it just really depends.
in some of the projects that I have done that we kind of see the negative sometimes often have higher or larger impact in terms of the outcome and the performance.
Oh, I'm sure under certain circumstances it definitely can. Yeah, it's identifying the circumstances and when it matters and when it doesn't. I wouldn't say as a general principle. My research shows that negativity tends to be stronger than positivity, but I think there are certain circumstances when it can be. Yeah, I think I saw. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
5 minutes? Okay. Yeah.
What's the boundary between an emotional response and a non-emotional response? So if you see something like some consumers say, I loved the prize, it was great. Is that an emotional response?
Yes. Yeah, so the nice thing is that for each word, I didn't have time to go into this, but in fact, maybe I can even pull up the slide if well, do I have access here? Oh, I'm not even gonna try. But I didn't talk about how we validate it and how we go about measuring it. We don't use machine learning here, so we actually have values for each word. So the word loved has a certain emotion rating to it. So if someone uses it, we have a number for that word. And so it's a continuum of very low emotion to very high emotion. And so if you gave me a word, I could tell you where it falls along the continuum. And the words great and loved are both relatively higher. Loved is about the most emotional we find that you can get. And so that word definitely puts you in the emotional side. But it's a continuum, so we don't make artificial dichotomies. We just say, yep, lower versus higher. But some words are definitely, of course, more toward the higher end. Yeah, good question.
Isn't this entirely consistent with the research, talk about psychology, that came out years ago that basically said decision-making was largely emotional and not rational? And where they took out portions of people's brains and they took out the emotional part and people could not make a decision. I mean, to me, that's exactly in line with that sort of thing, that things are much more emotional than we would think.
I agree to that to an extent, but the question is what triggers the emotional response? In other words, I think you can have a very rational argument. So if I told you about gun control and I told you about statistics about death in the United States, and I just gave you statistics about like, oh, this many deaths happening in the United States, that's very cold, rational information, but it can spur you to an emotional response. So in other words, emotion used as a basis of decision making is very powerful, but where that emotion comes from can be reason-based. Right? So my reasoning about the world can cause an emotional reaction, and it's still reasoning, but now I'm relying on the emotion to make a decision based on that reasoning. So I wouldn't make the dichotomy of like all decision making is emotional. I would say that it really depends on the information that you're getting to make that decision, which can lead to emotion, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I guess I am.
Yep, really simple question. Have you explored this in any other cultures or languages yet?
No, I would love to, but I have not. Yeah. I think I saw, oh wait, yeah?
So back, so follow up on the previous question is, so if you want to look at the reasons and have you look, so like when you ask the question service versus ambience, like everybody says service, and because that could be like reason that's driving the emotion, looked into like how we can diagnose
So I caught parts of that. There was an emergency going on. But you were asking, can we talk about facets of what drives emotion?
Right, like what are the different, like the reason behind?
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, there's lots of research in marketing and psychology about what causes emotional reaction, but I was just talking to Michelle Pham here a little bit ago about, like, I think it's under-researched what exactly is causing these sorts of reactions, the causal reason, and I think that's an interesting future direction. Yeah, I think I saw you. Yeah.
Yeah, really quick question. If we were to use this like tool, I guess, would it take into account like the changing nature of language? Because like, you know, millennials use a different word like for excitement, right? Like the word sick, for instance.
Yeah, so we're very careful about creating consistency. So again, I didn't get to talk about the validation, but we wanted to make sure that like some words are used consistently across topics, some aren't. And so we would pick up on slang as of, I guess this would be 2017 slang. But that slang is used very consistently. But yeah, this is an ongoing project. So, you know, just like you might be faced in your business, if you're doing sentiment analysis, you're always going to be trying to update those models, just like we will. So we'll release future versions. We're like, yep, this word has become less diagnostic of emotion and more of something else, and we'll continue to update it for that reason. But as of 2017, this should be good to go. Should be sick. Should be sick. Yeah. Question? Yeah. One more question.
You're in like enhancing words. So instead of maybe it being like effective, you use extremely effective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, we don't. So amplifiers, we don't look at amplifiers. So we just say, do you use the word? Then we can give you a value for that word. And on that same topic, we ignore words that are negated. So if you say that was not awesome, we kind of put our hands up and say, well, does that mean you're not emotional, or you expected emotion but didn't get it? Like, what does that mean? So we act as if someone didn't say the word awesome. We're just like, okay, we don't know what it means to negate a word. So we'll skip over it for now. That's a very conservative approach. And in the future, it'd be fun to look at amplifiers and negations and what exactly that means. But right now, we skip over them. Okay? All right. Thank you.